Hey everybody, Coach Toolshed here, and today I'm going to be bringing you my review for Ashen, which is the latest game on the Xbox Game Pass that you can pick up. If you have Games Pass already, you can download it right now for free, and it is also available on the Epic Game Store on PC. Now, this was supposed to be available through the Play Anywhere program for Xbox at one point, and they did say that it's going to be available on Play Anywhere later on. However, I don't think you can play it anywhere on PC right now. You have to get it through the Epic Games launcher, which that's going to be a topic for a different day. The Epic Game Store and all that. They're certainly throwing a lot of cash around, and this is one of the games that they have picked up to be exclusive on their PC platform right now. But you can also, like I said, play it through Game Pass on Xbox right now, and that's how I got mine. So I was not actually charged for this, which is not a bad way to play, but I'm going to give you my review for it right now. Let me know what you guys think afterwards. So, first and foremost, what do we have to think about Ashen? Well, the thing you need to remember first of all is that this is basically a Dark Souls game, and this is not really a bad thing, and in some ways it does differentiate itself in a certain amount of key ways from Dark Souls, so it does give it a bit of a different feel, but the basic structure and gameplay of the game is very much a Souls-like, and I would say it does more than Neo or Lords of the Fallen or other games of that ilk. I think this is the closest we've seen so far to a 3D Souls clone that really tries to do most of what Souls does. So if you've played those games before, this might be something you might want to check out. I believe it costs $40 retail if you don't have it through Game Pass, but that it is a little bit steep. It is kind of short. I beat the game in about 20 hours, and there's not a ton of bosses. But let's get into it. Let's see what we have here with Ashen. So right off the bat, you'll see that it has really a type of minimalist art design. It actually looks a lot like Absolver in that way, that Digital Devolver put out, I believe, last year. Kind of has that same feel and look to it. The characters don't have faces. Everything is just a little bit more, a little bit less detailed, I should say. A little bit more scaled down is what I was going to say there. But it has a certain aesthetic to it, which is very pleasant. And the fact that it doesn't seem as dark and foreboding as stuff in Dark Souls, it kind of makes it a little bit lighthearted in a way. Not in a ha-ha-ha sort of way, but just, it doesn't carry that sense of dread necessarily. Now, there are some areas where it's going to be nearly pitch black, and there's going to be enemies that jump out at you for a bit of dark jump scares, and so there are certainly those areas in there that do have that same sense of dread that you might find in a Souls game, and they'll give you a little lantern that you can carry through some of those areas, and that will light up a little bit of ball of light around your character, and it really adds a nice aesthetic to it. And the cool thing that this game does is it provides you with an AI companion at all times when you're out exploring. Now, you do have the option to shut that off, so you can play solo if you want, but the AI companions also play a role in the game because you have a hub town, sort of like the Firelink Shrine. In this game, it's called Vagrant's Rest, and you will unlock that. That's the first thing you do in the game is you go and unlock that little town, and various people that you discover out in the world will come and join your little village, and they will provide certain benefits, and they'll open up little stores, little crafting stations for you, and so everyone that you rescue out in the world will have a important part to do with upgrading your character, because you don't really level up in the traditional way in this game. But the companions that you bring back to town will also come out and explore with you, and they can be very helpful. They can revive you once during battle. If you die twice when you're out, you will be dead. They can't revive you more than once, and same thing with them. You can revive them once. If they die twice, then that's it for them for that session. Now, the interesting thing about it is there is a multiplayer option, but it's not the same type of multiplayer that you might expect. It's passive. And it wasn't until very, very late in the game that I realized that, hey, sometimes the person you're playing with is not an AI character. Sometimes it's a real person, and they will just put them in the game to assist you in co-op, and you really don't even know that they're there. So that's one reason why it's kind of cool to keep that enabled. People can show you some shortcuts. Maybe they'll do some show you a couple different items that you weren't aware of before. So it is cool, and you will also sometimes, you won't even realize that you are appearing in someone else's world. It's very unique, and I don't know. It would be nice if there is some sort of matchmaking system that you can have with friends. There's a password system, but apparently it still works in the same passive way, where even if you have the same password active, it doesn't necessarily sync you up with the person you're looking for. But it's very interesting. It's something that you can play the entire game and not really notice. But later on in the game, I did notice people acting much more strangely than a normal AI character, and that's what's got me thinking that. So I did look into it a little bit, and that is what happened. Now, having the extra person out there to help you can be, can it make the game too easy? Yeah, it might be able to, but like I said, you do have the option to disable that if you want. I actually did enjoy having the AI with me, and then when I realized in some cases I'm actually playing with another person, that just made the game, it did make the game pretty enjoyable. The fact that it was passive and you don't have to do anything, you don't have to enable it, there's no signs or anything you have to put on the ground, that was just a cool little touch, and something that's kind of unique to this game. I haven't really seen that in anything else except for Journey, I think, had that, but Journey did it kind of in a different way, and that's not really much of a co-op experience, and that was a much different type of game than this altogether. But it sort of does that exact same thing, and it's very cool. It's a very nice feature. Now, what you also notice with the people that you rescue in the game, and as you progress through the game, they will build up this town around you, and it will slowly get bigger over time. And I don't think I'm going to show any big spoilers for the town near the end of the game, but it does get pretty big at the end. Everyone has their own little house that they live in, and it's cool. Every time you go back, you'll see that a little bit more has happened, a little bit more has progressed, and there's about 7 different AI characters, NPC characters in the game that can come out and help you fight, and that will have their own little spot in the village. So it's a cool little feature, and it's something that sets it apart from the Souls game in a way, which is very nice. Now, what do we have when it comes to gameplay? Well, gameplay is basically exactly like Souls. You'll have your heavy attack, your light attack, your charge attack. You can play with a shield. I'm not much of a shield guy, so I did not choose to use a shield. I would switch between a two-handed weapon, and I would use a one-handed weapon with the lantern in these dark areas. But other than that, I didn't really feel the need to use the shield at all. I just never even had it equipped, and it's just not anything that I took the time to even bother with. But you could do that if you want. You also have different armor that you will find throughout the world, and it will have different stamina effects. Like some of it will drain your stamina faster, some of it will cost more stamina, and all the stats will be right there. Not too complex. There's only a few stats that it really deals with. Basically, you'll have the basic defense stat, and then you'll have the stamina regeneration stats that you can look at, and just pick whatever's right for you. If you're someone who likes to do a lot of dodging, a lot of rolling, and do some quick attacks like I like to do, that might be better for you if you went with a lighter armor. Or you can have the heavier armor, which obviously you can tank it a little bit more. But I gotta say, even with the lighter armor, you're pretty tanky in the game near the end of the game. You can take some big hits and survive pretty easily as long as you went through the game and did all the side quests for the other characters. If you just mainline the game itself and you don't worry about all the side quests, you will not be as strong. But the side quests you can do pretty much as you go. This stuff, it's a lot of stuff that will just happen naturally as you're out exploring. You will just find these different areas and find these different quests, and they do it pretty well. They give you a little quest log to look at. There's a little mini map you can also have. It doesn't work indoors, but it works well enough. Now, right there, you just see the person disappearing. That must have been someone desyncing from the world. So, at first, it was a little frustrating with the AI, I'll be honest, because I didn't understand why sometimes the AI would stay right by me and sometimes it would run off doing its own thing, and then that's kind of when I realized that it's not really AI at all times. But that was just a little clip I showed of the companion just phasing out in the middle. And this is right here. This is the start of the game. This is a ritual stone. And this is what you will use in place of a bonfire. So this will act as your fast travel point and all that. And pretty much everything else in the game is what you would expect from any Souls game. It's a little bit shorter. I don't think the bosses are all that great. I think the exploration out in the world is better. Ashen tries to do the labyrinthian routine where it's like, oh, look at all these mazes and cutbacks and stuff. But it doesn't really have any of those big, like, oh, wow, this cuts all the way back to here moments. It's a lot more linear than what the Souls games provide. You're basically just, if you look at the entire map from start to finish, you start on one side of the map and you're basically making a linear path to the end. Now it is all open, so you can walk from one end to the other, but the exploration, it just doesn't have that sort of loop back factor where you're doing exploring for an hour or so and then you're just like, oh wow, like I can't believe that I came all the way back here with this. It's all much more confined, much more linear. And I'll be honest, I don't think that the exploration really is that great because of that. I feel like they try to do these maze-like designs for the sake of being maze-like, but I don't really know that they pulled it off necessarily all that well. Some of the areas were just kind of a chore to get through, but they all did look good, and they do have each zone sort of has its own unique style to it. So the exploration was cool as far as that goes. The enemy layout, where the enemies were positioned, are all pretty good. You're going to have to end up fighting most enemies to get through the game. You can't really just sprint through everything. Now, you can try to sprint through some spots, that's true, but most of the enemies are placed in a way where you're going to have to end up fighting them regardless. So they did a pretty good job with enemy placement. As far as weapons go, oddly enough, there's no swords. You're going to have a lot of hammers, a lot of blunt objects, a lot of axes, stuff like that, clubs, but there's no swords for some odd reason. And the weapon choices is sort of like just pick whichever weapon you like the feel of. You'll have a option to have a two-handed weapon and a one-handed weapon equipped at each time. You can't have one of each. You have to have one or the other. And so your best bet is to just find a weapon where you like the animation of it, where you're comfortable with the weapon speed, the weapon movement, and the timing of it, and just stick with that weapon the entire game, because most of the weapons you're going to get aren't really going to really feel too much different. You can upgrade. They'll give you enough upgrade material throughout the game. It's very plentiful, and you'll have plenty of upgrade stuff to get your weapons of choice upgraded fully by the end of the game, so it's not really too scarce as far as that goes. You'll be able to get a few weapons upgraded, so it's not really a problem as far as that goes. And like I said, you'll have different armor sets and stuff that you can equip. Well, actually not sets, it's one piece of armor, but you'll also have relics and talismans that you can equip at some of the crafting stations in town, which can change the loadout of your character a little bit. But you don't really level up. You'll just, when you complete a quest, you will gain some health or you'll gain some stamina. You won't have stats to allocate. You'll just have the stuff you have equipped. Whatever weapon you have equipped, you can level that up, make it stronger. There you go. And then you can swap in the relics and talismans as you unlock them, and you can just change them whenever you feel like, as long as you have the points to allocate new ones. So everything in this game, like I said, comparing it to Souls might be a lazy sort of way to do it, but that's what this game's going for. So if you've played a Souls game, then you'll be familiar with this, except this game just isn't as hard, I would say. I didn't really die too much, except sometimes I would fall off the environment in some of the tighter areas when trying to dodge, but the enemies themselves aren't really necessarily too brutal. If you don't have a companion with you, obviously that can be harder, and the fact that you can't revive yourself like your companion can do, that can also lead to, having to replay some areas a little bit more. But for the most part, it's really not super difficult. The enemies are challenging enough, but they're not going to kill you just because you are, like I said, you end up being very tanky as long as you're doing the missions, because you'll have a ton of health and a ton of stamina, even if you are not spec'd into having a lot of damage reduction. You can go with a light loadout and still be very tanky, so that's what I ended up doing, and I didn't really have too much difficulty as far as that goes. Now here you see that this is some glitching. There are some AI glitches. You saw earlier in the video there were some frozen enemies. This is the only time that I came across this, but there is some times where the AI just doesn't react at all. Sometimes the AI will despawn. That's another issue. And there are some technical bugs as far as the game will freeze. I did have a solid amount of freezes, probably 3 or 4 total freezes where I had to shut the game off and restart it. So technically, it doesn't really run super great. The gameplay itself, though, no real frame rate lag. Didn't really have any issues. It would just randomly sometimes just totally seize up. So that's basically the game. I'm not really going to go too much deeper into it than that, because I think if you've played any Souls games, you'll pretty much know what you're expecting. Now, in this game, there's not a ton of bosses, and for the price tag of $40, that might be a little bit too expensive, because there's not even really a whole ton of replayability to it. There's not going to be a whole lot of loadout diversity that I would really be concerned with. So maybe if you have access to the Game Pass, I would say if you are a Souls fan, check it out. You might have a good time. I had a good time playing it. I think the game's pretty solid. I just don't think that it's anything necessarily spectacular. It is pretty good, though. Oh, by the way, I should really quickly point out, if you get stuck at this part of the game like I did, you have to beat the boss Amarin before you can unlock the ability to fast travel to the statues with this spear. So that's something that hung me up for a little bit. Anyway, I'm Coach Toolshed. That's my review for Ashen. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. If you guys tried it out yet, let me know. Please subscribe if you want to stay in tune with the channel headed forward. And as always, keep it turned to 11.